Welcome to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the big butch manly pop culture podcast that really values male friendship. I'm Andrew Wheeler.
And I'm Shane Holland.
Today we are talking about those two bestest buds, Sherlock Holmes and James Moriarty, in the new Prime series, I think it is, Young Sherlock, a mystery television series created by Matthew Parkhill and directed by Guy Ritchie, starring Hero Fiennes Tiffin as Sherlock Holmes and Donald Finn as James Moriarty. The show also stars Zine Sun and Joseph Fiennes, Natasha McElhone, Max Irons, and Colin Firth. Based on Andrew Lane's Young Sherlock Holmes book series, which in turn is inspired, of course, by Arthur Conan Doyle's original Sherlock stories, this features the 19-year-old Sherlock Holmes
19.
becoming a servant, I guess, at Oxford University, but quickly getting entangled in an assassination plot that takes him and his new bestie, James Moriarty, on a grand adventure to Paris and Constantinople. It's quite the Guy Ritchie show.
It is very Guy Ritchie.
Tell me about your relationship with Sherlock Holmes in general, Shane.
I actually love Sherlock Holmes. I have read the complete Sherlock Holmes, like from front to back, the entire works. I just love the character of Holmes, like the original detective novel, you might say. And I also really loved the BBC show, Sherlock. And for this, I rewatched a few episodes of that. And I gotta say, that held up. Mostly. I can't believe I'm saying that a show from 2009 feels of a time, but it feels of a time.
Yeah. Yeah, Stephen Moffat, I feel like the culture as a whole has fallen out of love with him, but those are very entertaining, like 90-minute movies, basically.
Yeah.
That are very Sherlock Holmesian. Like, it's very too smart for their own good and full of wit and villainy. I enjoy the show. I think it's worth rewatching.
And then there's Young Sherlock, which is definitely full of a lot of wit. Full stop.
No one could call me a hardcore fan because I've never read any of Arthur Conan Doyle's novels. I think I did maybe read one.
The Hound of the Baskervilles is the one that most people have read, and it's the best one,
I think that's probably true for me as well. But, he's so pervasive in the culture, especially in the UK, that everyone, living in London, you go to Baker Street Station, you see the Sherlock Holmes silhouette on the tiles. Yeah, he just is a big part of the sort of background radiation of life. And, I've watched many, many adaptations. Mostly enjoy the character. Even the Robert Downey Jr., the previous Guy Ritchie incarnation of Sherlock Holmes, which is one of the least faithful. Actually, Guy Ritchie is doing a more authentic Sherlock Holmes riff here, I think, than he was in the Downey Jr. movies.
I totally forgot about the Robert Downey Jr. movies being a Guy Ritchie joint. I think somehow in that interim, he's nailed a few things down about what the character actually is and the story that it's trying to tell. And the show is very uneven in a lot of ways, but there are some things that I really loved about it, and particularly the characterization of Holmes as kind of a rakish, roguish, rapscallion makes sense.
Yeah.
And feels more truthful to the novels than Robert Downey Jr.'s boxer sleuth.
Yes. Yeah. I enjoyed the show. I thought the writing was too clever by half. Everyone is being smart and witty and very proper at the same time, which creates a sort of distancing. Like, it's hard to get to know these characters because everyone's showing off all the time, and that does great. And I kind of wish there had been a bunch of individual cases rather than just one big one. I mean, it was structured like, oh, here's a case, but they were all part of the same narrative. I didn't need that, I don't think.
That was my biggest note too. I love Sherlock Holmes is inherently episodic, and here, okay, and I'm going to talk so much about Sherlock the show because I think that is actually probably the best example of Sherlock on screen. But what is great about that show, the set of miniseries, even though they're hour and a half long, then they are mini movies, is that they are very distinct. Each is a distinct case that is put forth and solved by the end of the episode. Here it is, as you say, one long case broken into tiny chunks. And I think that takes away from what Sherlock Holmes is. And it made me feel like, this show felt like early prestige television, where we were
Right.
telling one multi-season long story broken, and no episode had like a beginning or end. You're supposed to watch it all at once. It doesn't work for this character, and I like that you,
Yeah.
someone who's not a fan, can sense that as well.
Yeah. The early episodes, it did feel like we were doing one thing and they were connected by the Chinese princess narrative. But it quickly became, I think by episode 2, it was becoming apparent that no, this is all one story, and you're not going to get any like mini bosses along the way, which was a real tragedy. Moriarty himself isn't a nemesis in this. So what are we left with? And the answer, well, there will be spoilers. We'll get to it. But the nemesis that we do get is just a bit too Hollywood cliche, a bit Spectre, shall we say? Oops, that was too mean. I'm so sorry.
God, just have chills. Okay, you brought up something that I have to say, and you and I have spoken about this in private, but there is something very wicked happening in this television series, and I mean that in the sense of, Sherlock, is it true you were Moriarty's friend? Well, it depends on what you mean by friend. I did know her. That is, our paths did cross once at school.
Yeah. I mean, at least they're not in school anymore, I guess. By the end of the season, neither one of them is a student anywhere. But yes, it is very much that model. I assume these books are older than the movies Wicked, not older than the play Wicked, but from the same sort of set of instincts that say, if you're going to tell an origin story, have the hero and villain be besties. It also goes back to like X-Men comics, like Magneto and Charles did not start out as friends in their youth when first introduced, but now that is integral to their relationship.
Oh, wow. I mean, I did not know that about Magneto and Xavier, that they were
weren't at
originally...
school. Actually, they were at school, I think, in some of the versions. They are now at school, like the movies, maybe, but that's not the original.
It is becoming a tired trope.
Post-war Israel.
What?
Different.
Post-war. Yeah, it's just becoming a tired trope that, God, I almost would have preferred young Watson. And that goes against everything.
Would break everything.
It kind of breaks the conceit of like those two characters finding each other in the novels, in the shows. But that I would care less about. This Moriarty and Sherlock thing, it just seems like, you already mentioned Spectre and now I can't take it out of my head, but it also feels like a forced, like, my brother is my enemy, we were once closest brothers. And it doesn't sit well with me.
All right, let's take a diversion away from that, because we'll come back to it.
Oh, we will.
Let's talk about the women of Young Sherlock, of which I'm happy to report there are several women with key roles, in fact, extremely instrumental roles, and none of them are punished for being in the story. So that's a good start.
Amen. And I guess I'm going to start with the one constant woman throughout, who is Zine Sun's princess character. Very refreshing, considering how people of color are treated in Arthur Conan Doyle's works, even how people of color are treated in more recent Sherlock Holmes adaptations. I just love how incredibly stylish she is. Everything she wears is perfectly tailored or like flowy to the extreme, and also just a great characterization. Really switches between haughty, a snobbish princess to like gang-busting, crime-fighting, ass-whooping heroine.
Yeah, the best fighter in the show, by far.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe the most bloodthirsty as well. Yeah, it's a great character. It is an unapologetic character. Does There were moments early on where I thought, is this going to go into like Yellow Peril territory, like pulpy Asian villain territory? But she is more complicated than that. She is not a villain, though her methods are dubious. She gets a little bit lost in the second half of the season, I feel like. Like there are suddenly too many characters and her story falls a little by the wayside. But for the most part, I enjoyed this character being there and being explored as much as she was and
Mhm.
being, she's basically the third lead after the boys, very much integral to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, she does kind of disappear. I would say more in the middle act if we're going to consider it a 3-act
Yeah,
structure. But I do like that she kind of comes back really strong in those last 2 episodes. To tie up her own storyline, but B, she returns to form as an actual ass kicking person who is working both
yeah.
sides of the story in a way. I don't know. It worked. I also need to talk about Natasha McAlone, who has, I don't think, ever been given her due as an actor. And so
No,
it was really nice to see her get to do a little bit of everything. But that was also part of my problem with her character.
a little inconstant. The meds
Um,
are really good. When you get on the right meds,
yeah, I mean,
everything changes.
that is true, especially that
Testify.
19th century antipsychosis medicine is killer. Wow.
Yeah, I thought they just had laudanum. I thought
Yeah.
I was shocked how good her meds were. But I did like seeing a positive representation of a character with a mental illness. She
Yes.
wasn't monstrous because of it. She wasn't in the early scenes. She was the sort of doolally inmate at the asylum who couldn't form a sentence. But it turned out she was being abused. Like that was really the situation there. And yeah, I agree. Natasha McElhone she's fantastic. She's always been radiant and compelling. And seeing her get to be in this sort of playing a mother role, but she is not in any sense a regular. She's not a normal mum. She's a cool
I'm
mum,
not a regular
I
mom.
think is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I hope her character continues to be part of this show if it gets picked up for another season.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm sure it will.
There's no good choice of words here. It was insane to me how quickly she snapped out of her psychosis and
Mhm.
became part of the crime solving trio that is Sherlock, Moriarty, and Sherlock's mom. So good.
Yes.
So silly.
Not the most realistic depiction of mental illness, but at least it's
But
positive,
refreshing. Yeah.
We should also talk about Holly Cattle, who plays a really minor role in the start of the show. And big spoilers alert here. We're going to have to talk about where her character goes. So if you haven't watched the show, what are you doing here? This is a spoiler podcast. We're talking about everything. Holly Cattle is initially a secretary at Oxford University. She shows up a suspicious number of times in that role. And then in the second half, we discover that she is the long missing and presumed dead sister of Sherlock and Mycroft, Beatrice Holmes. I am a little bored of Sherlock's imagined sister showing up in things. I feel like this is the third major adaptation, at least, that has done this across various media. And it just seems to be a very of the moment. We've got Enola Holmes, we've got whatever she was called in the Sherlock TV show. And now Beatrice. I love female heroes. I'm all for, more female heroes in stories. That is not where this is going. But it seems like the mystery of him having a sister who is just as brilliant, but differently so than him, is a little bit tried and exhausted. Like, can we have brilliant female characters in these stories, like Zishan's princess, that aren't his sister? Doesn't have to be
Yes.
a home.
We don't need, yeah, we don't, she doesn't need to be brilliant because she's related to someone brilliant. That's actually
Yes.
kind of anti-feminist in a way. Like, the only
Yeah.
brilliant women are part of a family of male brilliant people.
Brilliant man.
The doctor was a woman, it's silly. It's very, very silly. And yeah, I mean, she could have just been, but I guess the whole story depends on solving the murder disappearance of Beatrice, but I don't know if I like that story. And so I'm saying, like, come up
That's
with a
it.
different story altogether. Like, just focus on the Xin Shun part, and this whole other B plot felt really unnecessary, but also the most important thing in the end. I don't know. It's confusing,
It's
and it confused the show.
yes, I think that's fair to say. It's the part of the show we didn't like, was the whole, like, the mystery ran through the whole thing. It was all about her, Beatrice Holmes. It did feel like the most disappointing part of the show is the part that's also the most cliche part of the show, the most overdone part of the
Go
show.
figure.
They
Go
perfectly
figure.
meshed together. Also, the relationship between Joseph Fiennes' character and Holly Kettle's character felt so creepy to me. That is a father and daughter,
Yeah.
and I don't know, do those two actors have incredible chemistry? Maybe they do. But I spent all of their scenes going, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this. No, no, no. Let's back away,
Look,
back
it
away.
was a different time, you know?
It was wrong. It was wrong.
Beatrice was also another example of interesting and abrupt motivational shifts happening in a character, much like her mother. At the last 2 episodes, she goes from being firmly arch, like, I am doing this because I hate you,
Yeah,
why, to actually, Mummy was right. The motivation part was missing.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it felt like we had to wrap this up, and so we did, and I needed more. I needed more context, more length in that area. Like, make this the second season kind of thing.
Right. The justification for her turn seems to be when Daddy Holmes basically says to his son, you're actually the one that I wish had been my heir. Your sister's just a placeholder for me actually getting to work with my favorite child. And it's like, well, okay, that's worse.
Yeah.
Now you've made it all worse. Like, I get that it's supposed to be a bad experience for her, but it's also narratively, it's saying, oh yeah, she's not as smart as him. She's not as brilliant or as fearsome as he is intellectually. But go figure. Girls, eh? Yes,
Women.
that's the vibe that I got from that.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fact that you've pinpointed the fact that, like, I mean, basically all three of these female characters, however much we may like them, uh, en masse and in general, they're all flip-flop a lot, and at least in the princess's case, that's because she's more than one person and
Mhm.
she's working more than one side, so it makes perfect sense. But to have the same thing happen with the other two women in the story in different degrees, it does start
Sloppy.
to make it look like you just think women are inconstant and flighty.
Yeah, something that's never been
Not
leveled
great.
against women before. Yeah.
Yeah, no. If they had their womb removed, would that make them better detectives?
God.
It's Victorian. It's Victorian.
I'm
Let's
not
talk about
suggesting it. They
the
were.
boys.
Yes. Yes, let's. Okay.
Let's go straight to Hero finds Tiffin. What a babe. Me.
What a hunk. So stunning. So charming. Those eyes. Those eyes. He's so
Insane
pretty.
eyes.
I mean, he is definitely a Fiennes. He's a fine Fiennes.
He's a real fine. Yeah, the fact that he's a Nepo baby, in this case, his uncles are Ray Fiennes and Joseph Fiennes. His mother is the director Martha Fiennes. The fact that he is a Nepo baby kind of feels cancelled out in this case, because you look at him and you think, well, that face is meant to be famous. Like, he's
Yeah.
actually better
Yeah.
looking than his uncles, who are both gorgeous men who were heartthrobs in their youth. The eyebrows, yes, the giant eyes. The
Mm-hmm.
cheekbones are impeccable. He's got those big pointy outy ears that I love. He's got a
Mm-hmm.
smile that's absolutely, like, right on that line between cocky and charming.
Mm-hmm.
He's truly beautiful, like shockingly beautiful man. And the camera loves him. And I wish the camera could love him with less clothes on, because we never get to gratuitously exploit his body in the whole show. And
No.
that really was a letdown.
Kind of surprising. Also, he goes through most of the series with a bloody nose, which somehow makes him hotter. I don't know. He also miraculously recovers from what would surely have been a fatal gunshot wound in the 19th century.
Yeah,
We're just going to gloss over that, right?
it's fine.
It's fine.
Just He didn't mean it. They didn't mean it. The bullet didn't mean it. He is also patient zero, though, for the whole show's style of sort of mannered, ironic distance. Like, he is that way, and then everyone else rippling out of him seems to be exactly the same tone and color of witty and distant, and it's too much. Like, let
It
him
would
be in relief to something else.
it would be great if it was just him. If it was just
Yeah.
him who was so sardonic, so witty, so cunning, so aloof, then I would believe it. But the fact that like he and Moriarty are in almost every scene together, and it would be difficult to describe them distinctly. One is English and one is Irish.
Yes.
That's about the difference between them. And you know, you could say that comes from the text, like Moriarty is supposed to be the evil Sherlock, but there's not enough of that in this show to
Uh,
uh to distinguish them that way.
I appreciate what a slow burn they're doing on Moriarty in sort of he's not born evil, which would be boring and cliche. He's clearly a good person at this stage in his life who doesn't have the moral clarity that Sherlock Holmes has and also is reacting to the world in a way that is very different to Holmes. The fact that he takes a life and is undone by it is a great moment, like maybe my highlight of the show,
Agreed.
because you can see how that's starting him on a journey to something else, to sort of
Yeah.
becoming a colder person in order to survive. Fabulous in the
Donald
role,
Finn.
such an interesting face that I felt like you were going to be crushing on him, even though I was not. He seems like your type rather than mine.
That's so funny that you say that, because I wrote here, Peter Claffey is what I think Irish people look like. Donald Finn is what actual Irish people look like. Donald Finn is, of course, very handsome. I don't want to take that
Yes.
away from him. He has so much forehead. And it's like that like triangular shape forehead. Like, it's just
Yeah.
really highlighted. Literally every word coming from this man is dripping in irony, which I find charming personally. I really liked his character. And I know I just said that there wasn't enough difference between him and Sherlock, so I'm kind of going back on my word there. But I think it's actually pinpointed by what you also just said. When Moriarty comes undone, it is truly like this is the moment that separates them, and the way that Donald Finn portrays that is stellar. It's really
Yeah.
fabulous. It's such a tight performance of someone who is realizing what they've done, but also realizing that they might not be affected by it the way that they're supposed to be, and what does that mean? And you can see this all flashing across his face, and eventually he does say those words, but he didn't need to, because it was all there.
Yeah. Shout out to Max Irons as Mycroft Holmes, the equally brilliant big brother.
Another Holmes nepo baby.
Another never baby. Yeah. I look at that man's face. I do not see Jeremy Irons in that face. I see his mother, Sinead Cusack, and he must thank God every day that that is true, because she was and is a very pretty woman,
Mm-hmm.
and he is a very pretty man, and his father is a scary man. So he
Yeah,
did well.
I really hope that you're flashing a picture of Sinead from like the 60s in her photo shoot era days,
Yes. Yes.
because my God, look at this woman. She is a model, and so is
Yeah.
this man with his slutty little
Yeah.
mustache. I loved him.
Honestly, yeah, I've seen Max Irons in other things, but the era lends itself so well to him, particularly
Mm-hmm.
the moustache, the suits, the uptightness of it all. Like,
Yes.
he came out of this an absolute prince in my eyes. I was like, oh, I think I maybe am a Max Irons fan.
He was the one who was the most, like, of the male characters, he was the most different, because he was stuffy,
Yes.
because he had responsibilities and he had feelings
Mm.
about it, and he was trying to distance himself from his brother. So yeah, like that, Mycroft was somehow the star character of the show for me.
I mean, aside from Hero Finds Tiffin's eyes and general beauty,
Yes, exactly.
are there any other boys you would like to talk about?
I mean, Joseph Fiennes was such a was one of my earliest crushes. It was wonderful to see him here, but he's not. There's no way to say this nice. He's not aging the way that some men do. Where I found him a heartthrob like 20 years ago. I don't find him a heartthrob now. And that's okay. That's okay. He's
Right.
still got some daddy
Yeah.
energy and vibes about him, but it was nice to see him in something. Again, I just wish he were playing like a different character than the same character that everyone was playing.
Yeah. Colin Firth is also in this,
Mm-hmm.
having great fun for his few episodes. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, Colin.
Let's talk about the music in this show because it is a whole attitude. What did you think of the opening theme, which was Days Are Forgotten by Kasabian?
Not a fan.
Nope, I hated it. You're in safe company here.
Yeah.
Which, ironically, I'm about to shout out a song that has that exact same refrain in it, but that I love. So I am
Oh.
a total hypocrite about this. But yeah, I found the opening song very skippable, almost Apple TV levels of irritating.
The only thing that saved it was that the opening credits felt like a Craig era Bond pastiche.
Yes.
And that I
And
did
told the
enjoy.
whole story of the season.
And somehow told the whole story. I gave you all the clues, Mr. Policeman. Yeah. I mean, that was cool. Like, it looked visually,
Yeah.
it was really interesting. It was just like, I'm gonna mute the TV for 45 seconds. That's all.
A lot of anachronistic music in this show. A lot of Irish folk rock, which
Yeah, not really my thing.
that's fine. But also some good, like some groovy French 60s pop, Jacques Dutronc, whose music is
Yes.
very Kinks esque. I don't know who came first. The choice to make it anachronistic is very Guy Ritchie, and in the spirit and in the mode of Guy Ritchie, it meant that some treasures were being dredged to the surface here that I really enjoyed. A Nancy Sinatra song I'd never heard before, Lightning Girl.
Yes, that was the
Great
one
song.
I pointed out too. Like a very Western, like hardcore country theme from Nancy Sinatra, which
Yeah.
I really liked. Also, The Cure, A Forest, a really great Cure track, which is light on vocals, but very ethereal and fit very well in, I want to say, the third last or second last episode.
And the one I wanted to call out is a song called Aflana by Atarazat Adabia and Farajala. It is a 70s funk masterpiece based on Feu Release and featuring lots of those call to prayer. And yet somehow I really loved it. Like it was a real discovery. Like I was listening to that track thinking, this sounds like Feu Release, but wait, what is happening? And it seems so contemporary. And it is literally a sort of lost track from the 70s, by which I mean it was, I think, never released.
Wow.
So I don't know how Guy Ritchie found it, but I'm very grateful he did.
The only other song I have is a more modern song, "Life Is" by Jessica Pratt, but it's modern, made in the last 10 years, but it feels like it's straight out of the 60s. It's this very like California hippie movement song, but what if dark?
What if not? All right, let's move into the fashion now, because actually there's quite a lot to talk about here, but
Yeah.
all good, I think.
Yeah. Okay, if we're talking about anachronism, it's like all of the fashion is clearly modern. Like everything could be worn on someone today in a
Yeah.
GQ or a Vogue, and you would say, yes, I want each of those pieces. And yet
Yeah.
it all felt right at home in the period. It made sense. It was just like a leveled up version of 19th century tailoring. It was beautiful, really beautiful, particularly the men's outfits. There is this scene in Constantinople where we get Sherlock,
Yes.
Mycroft, and Moriarty in matching suits in cream, yellow, and gray. And it is just fantastic. And it's like, that is the height of today's men's fashion. I love it. I love it so much.
Honestly, they have exactly the same note. That sequence in Constantinople, those three suits, those three colors. Yeah, like it's so rare for a show like this that has so much incredible wardrobe design that it is the men's suits that make you stop and go, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're so good, so handsome, so together. The fact that they were matching each other, but you could get away with it.
Hmm.
Impeccable, impeccable stuff. Everything looks good on Hero Finds Tiffin.
Oh
Of
my
course,
God.
he makes a flat cap look like haute fashion.
From a brown
We're doing our
bowler to a
best.
page boy. Yeah.
So, yeah, he is. He would have been a model if he hadn't been a Finds. Is my feeling about him, and he is also a model, of course. So, you know,
Yeah.
carry on.
I don't know how period accurate it is. And once again, I didn't do my research thoroughly, but the traditional Chinese dress worn by the princess in the very first scene is stunning.
Um,
The makeup is stunning. I mean, Queen Amidala from Star Wars Episode 1 was inspired by these kinds of dresses, and it shows. I felt like I was transported back to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when she starts fighting in that dress. It was astounding. Really astounding. And then the character kind of transitions into like waistcoat and bustle skirt and tailored
yeah.
suits that match the men's fashion, and so good.
And there are scenes early on when she's in Oxford when she's wearing just these incredibly colourful outfits surrounded by the stuffy greys and browns of Oxford, where that also, like, it just works so beautifully. Like you, I don't know if these Chinese garments are authentic, if that's what they look like at the time or at any time. But I don't think anyone could complain that they weren't given like fine tailoring and utmost attention. They're really beautiful outfits. And
Hmm.
I would guess that they are on par with how everyone else is dressed anachronistically.
Yeah.
It works to my eye, but I would be interested to hear. There's some great costume wardrobe YouTubers that I watch who talk about different period works and whether they are A, authentic, and B, if not authentic, do they get away with it? And I would love to see their unpacking of all this.
Were there any other fashion highlights for you?
I really like James Moriarty's brown wool suit that he's wearing about
Mm.
the midpoint of the season. That looks like a heavy, warm suit, but it looked great on him. And there is in Constantinople, both the boys are wearing these like Indiana Jones outfits.
Oh my God.
They
Yeah.
suddenly have the cowboy hats and the leather jackets and things. Oh, and the princess's leather trench and tailored waistcoat in Paris.
Oh my God. So
Beautiful.
good.
So
So
good.
good.
Any more from you?
No.
All right, now we're going to get into our defining the category, but also the one which so often sees us come undone, the queerness of Young Sherlock. Is it queer? How is it queer? Is it textually queer? Is it subtextually queer? Is it not queer at all?
I feel like this is the great debate with Sherlock Holmes always.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
feel like the more we learn about queer identities, it is easier to slot Sherlock into the asexual category. And yet, as someone who's read the books, I've always felt that there is some kind of tension between Watson and Holmes that is unresolved. Like, Watson he's very much a pressed husband. He's doting on Sherlock, and he's always disappointed by Sherlock, but then he comes home to Sherlock and they live together, and Watson leaves and gets married, but his marriage is unsuccessful and he comes back to Holmes. And so there has always been this queer reading of those two
yeah.
characters. There was sexual tension between Sherlock Holmes and James Moriarty in this show. Am I wrong?
I think the queer reading of the show is the homosexual reading of the show is definitely something for people to dig their teeth into. Like there is enough there that you can absolutely explore it, especially when James bangs Sherlock's sister, which I mean, that
If you
felt
can't
like a
have, then you go for,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But I also think I agree with you that Holmes is generally asexual, and I think they leaned into that in this production. I think this Holmes is absolutely asexual. His relationships with women are never really flirtatious any more than his relationship with everyone is a bit flirtatious because he's smarter. than everyone else, but he's never actually like interested in women. Thank God, because one of the first women he meets is his sister. You know, even when the princess sort of comes into his room to seduce him, it doesn't feel like he wants to be seduced. She just has to poison the tea. It's like, well, I don't know how to get him into bed, but I can make him drink tea. You know, preach, sister. I get it. So yeah, I actually love that they seemed quite deliberate in making this Sherlock Holmes ace. That doesn't mean he can't have a relationship. Like asexuality is often misunderstood. People think it means that you're going to stay single, that you're not interested in romance. That doesn't have to be the case. And so there is still that relationship with Moriarty that is never going to go anywhere in this adaptation. But you know, we can still have that reading. Both readings, I think, both queer readings of this text can exist side by side.
I found it surprising that no one objectified Sherlock Holmes in this series.
Yes.
Like, he is, I mean, yeah, beauty standards change, but this is a show that was made in the 21st century. So surely there should have been like a gaggle of women at a bar looking over, like,
Honestly,
at some point.
beauty standards don't change so much that there was a time when Hero finds Tiffin wasn't gorgeous. I mean,
Thank
come
you.
on.
Yeah. Oh, that poor boy is wasting away. He's so thin. Someone feed him something.
Well, I'll feed him something. Yeah, like there's a scene where he's in a bathtub, and I'm like, and we cut away. We don't see anything. We don't get the classic getting out of the bathtub, wrapping a towel around the waist sequence. Like even the scene when he's in the hospital bed, like that's not supposed to be sexy, but there's like one shot across his body where I'm like, okay.
Oh. Yeah.
But
should
it's
get
a
shot more often.
real weird angle. And yeah, they did not want us to crush on this boy, and that's crazy.
Weird.
Because we were gonna.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get it if your mission is to say this character is asexual, then to sexualize him would maybe feel exploitative. Maybe that's the thinking.
Okay.
That seems like an awfully elevated approach for this show, though.
That's a real deep reading of Guy Ritchie that I don't think anyone has ever made before. Yeah.
I don't know. He probably has adult kids by now that have told him how to be woke.
Be nice, yeah. Okay, so that's all subtext, right? Textually,
yes,
there's one instance of a side character's sexuality being used as a threat to remind us that this was a different time. And that was the only, like, queerness actually in this show. And I just think that's important to note that...
Yeah.
It wasn't good representation.
I'll consider that when we get to the scoring.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the scoring.
Okay, great.
So we give every show or movie we watch for this podcast a base score out of 5. We then also give it a gay score around the 5 pillars that we have just discussed, which is how are the women represented? Are the boys hot? Is the music great? Is the fashion spectacular? And is there queerness in the work? We can also apply a penalty, deduct a point for anything that is just offensive to our sensibilities that we could not excuse in the production, for a combined total of out of 10 points. So, Shane, let's start with the base score. Just as a work, out of 5, what do you give this show?
I'm going to give it a 3. It was good. It wasn't great. It wasn't phenomenal. It was good. It was fun. It was fun to watch. I would give it that.
Yeah. Didn't regret the time we spent watching it. Would watch another season of it. It's a 3 from me as well. The women, we've said there are 3 lead women. There's also a lot of other women just sort of milling around the edges. We get to go to the Folie Bergère, and the sex workers are not treated poorly. So that's all to the good.
I'm going to give the women a point. I really enjoyed Natasha McElhone. I really enjoyed Zine Sung.
I'm going to give it a point as well. I think, I was impressed that the women, I mean, again, the usual low bar, but I was impressed that the women were treated as actual people in this show.
Yeah.
In a show that is so much about male friendship in a very male world, we could easily have seen none of that. Or we could have seen the usual fetishization of the princess and, the disregarding of the mother character. The boys, Hero finds Tiffin is surely worth a point if he were the only hot boy in this show, and he's not. So I have to give it the boys' point.
Yeah, absolutely. Max Irons and Donald Finn add to that point. Absolutely.
The music Now we're getting into less clear territory with the back categories. How did you feel about the music overall?
You know, the good songs happened in the end credits, and the credit song was skippable. I'm not gonna give it the point. I wasn't particularly moved by the soundtrack like I was in, say, Heated
Yeah.
Rivalry.
Yeah, I came away with two tracks that I'm adding to rotation, the Nancy Sinatra track and the 70s Moroccan funk track. The Kasabian song has to be punished, so I can't give it a point. But the fashion, I mean, I think I know where this one's going to go.
Yeah,
So
hands down.
menswear gets the point.
Absolutely. No discussion
And
needed.
then, no discussion needed. The queerness, how do we do this one, Shane? You tend to like it to be out there in the text. I'm a bit more wishy-washy.
And I'm gonna stick to that. I'm not gonna give it the point because it is all just wishful thinking on my part, and none of it is actually presented in the characters the way I would want it to be presented in the characters.
I want to recognize that I think this is a good presentation of asexuality. They can't use that word because it wouldn't have existed in that meaning at that time. But there are other ways to communicate it more explicitly than they did. I think there is a queerness point waiting for this show in season 2 if they can be a bit more transparent about it, but I cannot. I wish. And I think it's there in the work. And I think it is
Yeah.
text that he is asexual, but I don't think it's bold enough text, shall we say.
Be
So
bold,
I'm
Guy
withholding the point.
Ritchie. Like, take a
Yeah,
wild swing and watch how people, like, actually kind of flock to it. That's what I would say.
yeah. Guy Ritchie, of course, known for his subtle work. Oh, really asking a
Yeah,
lot
be
here.
bold, man. Come on. For once in your goddamn life.
Do we think there's anything here egregious enough that we would dock a point?
No. I thought it was,
No.
like, much more respectful than the 19th century actually was.
That's a very, very fair point. So no penalty applied. That means it gets 6 from you and a 6 from me for a total of 6.
And that's 3 out of 10 out of 5 in our gay score, which
Yes.
means, you know, this is pretty, like, it's not a bad score. So I would say,
Yeah.
in general, it's a fun show to watch. And then it is also easy as a queer person to watch this show.
Yes. Yeah. It's not going to upset or offend you, probably. And yes, it's very enjoyable. And what, 8 hours of Hero Finds Tiffin?
Come on.
That's really a treat.
I'd do it
That boy is
again.
going to have to go on to many great things. And I'm officially on board
Yes,
with whatever he does next.
as am I.
James Bond?
We've talked about it before. I believe he's on one of our
I
casting
talked about
lists.
he's almost too pretty for James Bond. That's
That is the problem.
my problem. All right, if you enjoyed this video, you can check out many other videos that we've done on Bond films, on other films, on other, well, have we talked about Guy Ritchie before in the videos? Maybe not. But we will talk about Guy Ritchie again. And we will
Now we
talk
have
about
to.
Hero Finds Tiffin again. Yeah.
Definitely.
So check out our Bond casting episode to see what we talked about there and where Finds Tiffin came in on that. And in the meantime, please do click like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And send this video in your group chat to your queer besties and your queer fam, because we would love to be seen by more people. It just,
Please?
we'll pause for that.
This is a face for YouTube, not a voice for radio.
Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, kiss kiss.
Bang bang. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. You can follow Kiss Kiss Bang Bang on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd at KKBBpod, or email us at kisskissbangbangpod@gmail.com.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is recorded in Toronto on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples.